As far as disadvantages, I don't know if disadvantages is the right word necessarily, but there's definitely some challenges. Where are the cattle going to be in March and April now? You know, in the past we knew they were going to be close to the yard, and that's where we'd be feeding them. And you know that, so we had to kind of rethink where can they be. And in some cases, it's actually to our advantage because we can get them back out to some of those places where we maybe have, for example, Kentucky bluegrass is something that there's kind of a window of time where the cattle will eat it. And I would say that starts about as soon as the snow melts, and it goes until about the 1st of June. Well, now we're able to get cattle out to some of those places that we couldn't before because we were calving. And now in March we can have them, you know, if they're 5 miles from home, that doesn't bother me too much as long as there's not a big blizzard in the forecast or whatever. But
so we run one cow to the acre while we're calving, usually for 30 to 45 days, and then we'll turn them to new grass, and we're probably at 2 acres per cow for the next cycle. So for the first cycle, they're on the feed wagon, they're eating old dead grass, and then after the grass greens up, after it heads out in June, then we turn them to fresh green grass to finish calving.
You know, a lot of people are concerned about being able to rotate if you're in a rotational grazing program. And actually, we find it works extremely well to be calving while we're in a rotational grazing system. We move the cows that haven't calved ahead of the ones that have, so we're continually dropping groups of pairs behind. We're constantly moving those cows that haven't calved to fresh, higher quality forage, a cleaner location. The cows are in a smaller group. And so by dropping those pairs off behind us, rather than pairing them up and taking them away from the group that's calving, we found it to be a lot more healthy, better nutrition, and less labor, and again, more profitable.
The first year we changed, we didn't change enough of our other operation to allow kind of maximum benefit from switching to May calving. And by that we switched and we were trying to calve early in May because I didn't want to have such small calves in the fall. I thought if I was still trying to calve in early May. And what we ended up happening was we're trying to move our calves from kind of this winter area where we have them close to the place, and we're trying, you know, we have week-old calves that we're also trying to move out. And it was a little bit of a disaster, honestly, because we've got calves that don't want to follow their mothers because they're a day or two old, and then there's cows that are losing calves. And so we switched, and we now calve a week later, and that way we can actually move our cattle to their summer pasture, which is, you know, it's 10 miles away, so I can't check it as easily. So we're actually moving the cows prior to calving so we can calve out on green pasture. And what that allows us to do is once those cows get to that green pasture, they have a nice clean place to calve, they can have their own space and form that nice bond with the calf, and it really reduces stress on the cow, it reduces stress on the calf. It also allows us to get into our grazing system a little bit quicker because we can still move those cows every couple of days with those calves because they're just moving from, you know, one side of a polywire to another side of a polywire, and those calves can either catch up or follow right along even if they're just a day or two old. And that allows us to meet our goals for the environment as that grass is growing very quickly. In early May, we want to be moving quickly to take advantage of that spring flush. And just with that quick movement, we're allowed to kind of get some bonus grazing because we're able to actually keep up with the grasses that we have on the operation. Okay. We're moving cows from one area to another, and if we have very young calves when we're trying to do that, what we end up with are just a lot of stresses on that pair bond that we didn't really think about when we made that change. So we're trying to reduce that stress and make sure that that cow is in a place where she's going to stay for at least a month, ideally for a couple of months before she has a calf. But as you think about changing to a later calving period, that's something that I guess we didn't really think about up front because I had never really heard of someone talk about it, is these, you know, day to week-old calves, 2-week-old calves, they don't like to get pulled out of an environment they're comfortable in and plopped into a new environment, because the mother is really excited because she's got fresh pasture and she's going to go off and maybe forget her calf, and the calf is going to get let out of the trailer and he has no idea where he's at and he might take off. And we had some rather exciting rodeos of trying to round up calves that had no idea where they were and getting cows and calves back together, versus if the cow had her calf and she knows where that calf is at and they're already out on pasture, it works better. It's just a lot better for them.
From the time the first calf is born to the last calf, we probably move them about a dozen times. And I would say that probably acres probably run anywhere from 40 or 50 acres to a quarter. And you know, of course, we have sometimes a quarter might even be subdivided with polywire, but we like to have plenty of room so the cattle can separate themselves from one another and not, you know, have problems with cows that are trying to calve too close to each other.
When we moved our calving date to May 1st, it was too soon for us. And so we had to adjust that. And my dad told me, when we talked to him, I told him what we were going to do. His first comment was, May 1st, that's too early. If you're going to move it, you better get it further into May than that. I'm like, shocked me. Like, he was supposed to say, what are you doing moving into May? You're supposed to be in March and February. You know, no. He was already thinking differently as well. We already made this move, but he could tell it wasn't late enough, and he was spot on. We run into trouble. We were having calves while we still had cows in places that didn't have good forage. And then we were trying to move cows and calves to grass so we could get out on grass with little baby calves, and it didn't work very well. And so we learned that wasn't a good date for us.
Yeah, we got a calf bond and move. Okay. All calves have to be tagged, castrated at birth, all that stuff. We went to the castrating at birth due to moving, mothering up, because a fresh castrated calf would just go lay down in the grass somewhere you couldn't move him. It just made our deal a world of difference. We tried pouring calves, pouring cows. We quit that. We went totally, cows hit the yards, no vaccinations to the cows. We do that, all that in the fall. Cows just go on truck. That way, no smell changes. Cows mother up 10 times better. My kids love me a hell of a lot better when we quit doing that. And
we spent a lot of times just going out and moving cows, not paying attention to them, and we ended up with calves that didn't know where their mamas was, and they might lay there for 2 days, so they get dehydrated when it's hot. When they're 80 pounds and it's 95 degrees, they will get dehydrated pretty fast. So going to different cattle handling seminars and listening to different people, we try to make them cows have their calves with them before we let them move. If they're going to come over and scream and cry and they still got feed behind them, I leave them alone until they're ready to be polite. When I roll the fence up, they're not trying to run over me to get into the new pen. And it's a slow process, but it seems to me like it's working. We're not finding the wandering calves back behind them anymore, so it seems to be teaching them to keep track of their baby a little bit better. So, okay, if you have a calf that gets sick when he's 100 pounds in end of June, he can dehydrate real fast. So to us, we learned that when we're moving them every day, though, or every other day, we get to look at them. So we're out there with them and we can catch that right away. Yeah, the moves get it's kind of entertaining, but yes, the calves, a lot of times they know when it's time to move, but a lot of the calves are already moved. They're going out into the fresh pasture already. But one of the things that happens when we move them, we roll the fence up and the cows go in and get to eat, and the calves are like a bunch of high school kids turned loose. They're out there running and jumping, and mama's not watching us. We go do what we want, and they'll cover whatever pasture they were in. They'll cover it 3 or 4 times on the dead run. Tails in the air, they're just out there playing. And so there's something happens to the whole herd when you move that cow. The excitement level is what I think goes up, and the cows transfer that excitement level to the calves, and everything's just out running and having fun. And that's probably one of the most healthy things you can do to that calf is get him up and get him to run every once in a while. It just helps clear their lungs and makes them feel better. One of our grazing techniques is never to move our cattle over through more than one fence. And that means if we got a gate there, we're going to move them through that one gate. We're not going to take them any farther than that. But the poly wire, we make to adjust the size of the pasture to our forage and number of cows. So we'll roll up the wire that's holding them back out of the new paddock, and then the cows have all of that and whatever else they were in. So I never back fence them, because when we did back fence them, we ended up killing some calves, because that baby calf, you can't see it back there. It's hiding. So we never back fence them. We let the mamas go back into it.
It was more enjoyable for the kids to be out there doing it. We started a sandhills rotation where we moved the drop bunch every few days. And our kids were little and they hated sorting pairs like every little kid does. They just hated pushing them out of the pasture. And so we started this rotation where just every 2-3 days we moved the drop bunch to a new pasture. Well, the kids got, they're 7-8 years old, and they could do that by themselves, because they could tell if a cow had calved, and they'd pick up and just move the whole bunch, and it become really enjoyable for them to go do that every afternoon or every other afternoon. And so it was a win-win, and then we just start catching them pairs up later.
I set up 3 pastures. I start calving in one. I calve about 1/3 of my cows in the first one, move them to the next one, calve another 1/3 in the next pasture. Then I calve the last 1/3 of them, and they're always on clean grass that way.